The notion that ordinary places hold no secrets is a comforting lie, a veil drawn over the eyes of the unwary. Bus stops, these mundane junctions of haste and waiting, are anything but ordinary. They are liminal spaces, thresholds where the veil between worlds thins, and where the echoes of forgotten encounters linger like dried blood on cold stone. I have seen them, you see, not with my waking eyes, but in the fractured visions that claw at the edges of my sanity. These are not mere stories. They are fragments of lives, bled dry, whispers caught in the exhaust fumes of passing vehicles, tales of the unspeakable that transpire when the mundane mask of reality slips, revealing the ghastly face beneath. This isn't about coincidences or fleeting moments. It's about the curtains of reality parting, exposing the rot that festers beneath the veneer of everyday life. Think of the silence that descends between buses, the way shadows lengthen and twist into forms that mock the logic of daylight. It's in these pauses, these pregnant silences, that the true nature of these ephemeral gathering places reveals itself. The air grows heavy, thick with unspoken fears, and the ordinary becomes extraordinary, laced with an ancient dread that seeps into the very asphalt. We are drawn to these places, perhaps unconsciously, by a siren song of the macabre, a yearning for the thrill of the unknown that lies just beyond the reach of our understanding. I once saw a bus stop, not as a structure of concrete and metal, but as a gaping maw, its benches like broken teeth ready to swallow the unsuspecting. A young woman, her face etched with a weariness that went beyond mere travel, sat there, clutching a worn satchel as if it were a shield against an invisible assailant. The streetlights cast long, skeletal fingers across the deserted pavement, and each passing car was a phantom rushing by, its headlights momentarily illuminating the stark terror blooming in her eyes. She was waiting, yes, but not for a bus. She was waiting for the inevitable, for the moment the shadows would coalesce and claim what they were owed. It began with a tremor, a subtle shift in the atmospheric pressure, like the earth itself holding its breath before a catastrophic event. The woman shivered, though the night air was not particularly cold. It was a cold that originated from within, a creeping dread that had been her companion for days. She recounted to me, in the hushed tones that only the truly terrified can muster, how she had first noticed the subtle shifts, a recurring number sequence, a stranger's gaze that lingered too long, a sense of being perpetually watched. These were the breadcrumbs leading her to this desolate crossroads, this stage set for a drama of pure, unadulterated horror. She spoke of a figure, a silhouette against a dimming light, that seemed to materialize from the very air. It was not a person, not in the conventional sense. It was a collection of absences, a void in the fabric of existence that radiated an ancient malevolence. Its form was indistinct, shifting like smoke, yet its presence was undeniably pounding, a visceral weight pressing down on her soul. It was the embodiment of every hidden fear, every repressed trauma, given form and purpose in the lonely twilight of a forgotten bus stop. This was the omen she had been dreading, the shadow that had followed her from the periphery of her life into its very center. The air around the figure seemed to vibrate with an unseen energy, a low hum that resonated deep within her bones. It was the sound of despair, the lament of lost souls trapped in an eternal, silent scream. She described how the ordinary sounds of the city, the distant sirens, the rumble of traffic, seemed to fade into an oppressive silence, leaving only the thrumming of her own terrified heart and the insidious whisper of the approaching entity. This was not a physical threat, but something far more insidious, something that sought to unravel the very essence of her being, leaving behind only empty husks. Then came the touch. Not a physical contact, but a chilling caress that seeped through her clothes, through her skin, and into her very soul. It was like the touch of ice, a profound cold that extinguished all warmth, all hope. She felt her consciousness begin to fray at the edges, her sense of self dissolving like mist in the morning sun. The entity was not merely present, it was an active participant, drawing her into its own desolate reality, a place where light and life ceased to exist. This was the final descent, the moment when the unknown ceased to be a distant fear and became an all-consuming embrace. She remembers the feeling of being utterly powerless, a marionette whose strings had been severed, leaving her to dangle helplessly in the abyss. The bus stop, once a symbol of transit and connection, transformed into a cage, its bars forged from her own escalating terror. The approaching headlights of a distant vehicle offered no salvation, only a fleeting, mocking illumination of her predicament. It was a stark reminder of the world she was losing, the normalcy that was rapidly slipping through her fingers, replaced by a creeping, suffocating nihilism. The shadows deepened, not just around her, but within her, consuming her light. Now, imagine this. The very seats you might have occupied, the pavement you might have stood upon, have witnessed these unfoldings. Each bus stop is a stage for these unseen dramas, a silent witness to the moments when the veil is at its thinnest. Think of the people who have sat there, their mundane worries and fleeting thoughts, completely oblivious to the battles being waged in the unseen realms around them. They are the unaware, the ones who walk through life with their eyes closed, shielded by the comforting illusion of safety, never truly comprehending the cosmic theater playing out in plain sight. There was another vision, etched into my memory with the clarity of a bloodstain on parchment. A man, his face a roadmap of hardship and regret, sat hunched on a bus stop bench late one night. The rain was a relentless curtain, blurring the edges of the world, and the only sound was the rhythmic drumming on the shelter's roof. He wasn't simply waiting for a ride, he was wrestling with a demon, an inner torment made manifest by the oppressive atmosphere of the deserted stop. The loneliness of the place amplified his despair, creating a fertile ground for the seeds of his own self-destruction. He confessed, in a voice rough with unshed tears, how he had come to this bus stop seeking solace, or perhaps oblivion. He had lost everything: his job, his family, his very sense of self. The world had become a hostile alien landscape, and this desolate corner, under the cold, indifferent glow of a flickering lamp, felt like the only place that truly understood his immense suffering. It was a sanctuary of sorrow, a place where the weight of his failures felt less like a burden and more like a familiar shroud. As the minutes ticked by, marked by the slow sweep of the windshield wipers on passing cars, he felt a presence coalescing in the darkness beyond the shelter's meager light. It wasn't a physical entity, but a palpable sense of judgment, a cold, calculating intelligence that fed on his misery. He described it as a shadow with eyes, a void that pulsed with an ancient, insatiable hunger. This was the darkness that had been lurking at the edges of his perception, now boldly stepping into the forefront, drawn by the irresistible scent of his despair. The air grew thick with an unspoken threat, and the man found himself paralyzed, not by fear, but by an overwhelming sense of inevitability. It was as if his entire life had been a slow, deliberate march towards this very moment, this solitary encounter at a forgotten bus stop. The shadow seemed to draw closer, its form indistinct yet undeniably menacing, whispering temptations of release, of an end to the gnawing pain. It offered a dark peace, a cessation of all feeling, all responsibility. He could feel its tendrils probing his mind, seeking out the deepest wounds, the most painful memories, offering to dissolve them in a sea of oblivion. It was a seductive poison, promising an end to his torment, but at a cost far greater than he could comprehend. The rain continued to fall, washing over the scene like a mournful dirge, a soundtrack to his internal groan. The flickering lamplight cast grotesque shadows that danced and writhed, mirroring the turmoil within his soul. amplifying the chilling embrace of the unknown. And then, a transformation, not of salvation, but of surrender. The man's shoulders slumped, not in defeat, but in a profound soul-deep acceptance. He closed his eyes, and the shadows seemed to engulf him, not violently, but like a tide pulling a weary swimmer out to sea. The sounds of the night faded, replaced by a profound absolute silence. The bus stop remained, a silent, indifferent witness to the moment a soul slipped through the cracks, a whisper swallowed by the vast uncaring darkness. The story ended, not with a bang, but with a chilling, implacable silence. These are not isolated incidents. These bus stops are nexus points, accidental altars where the mundane and the occult collide. They are places where the veil between our reality and others is so thin that entities, drawn to the raw energy of human emotion, fear, despair, loneliness, can manifest, or at least exert their influence. Think of the cumulative weight of every prayer uttered, every tear shed, every desperate thought conceived at these transient stations. It all coalesces, a potent brew that beckons to the inhabitants of the shadows, drawing them closer to the fragile light of our world. Consider the symbolism. A bus stop is a place of waiting, of transition. Travelers arrive, but they are not yet at their destination. They are suspended between 2 points, vulnerable, their intentions and emotions exposed. This liminal state, this suspension of purpose, creates a psychic resonance that acts as a beacon for forces that thrive in such ephemeral spaces. They are drawn to the energy of incompletion, to the unfinished narratives of those who pause there, unaware of the unseen audience that observes their every hesitant step. I have seen these entities myself, not as solid beings, but as distortions in the air, ripples in the fabric of reality that seem to absorb the light. They are often accompanied by a palpable drop in temperature, a prickling sensation on the skin, and a faint, cloying scent, like decaying flowers or damp earth. These are the hallmarks, the subtle signs that you are not alone, that something ancient and indifferent has taken notice of your fleeting presence. It's a chilling intimacy, a recognition that you are merely a flicker of life in their vast, timeless existence. One particular encounter haunts me. I was observing a bus stop at dusk, a place that had always emanated a peculiar stillness. As the last vestiges of daylight bled from the sky, I perceived a gathering. It was not of people, but of shadows coalescing around the empty benches. They moved with a fluidity that defied natural laws, their forms shifting and reforming like liquid night. There was no sound, only a profound sense of ancient cold awareness emanating from them. It was the quiet hum of a predator observing its prey. The air grew heavy, thick with an unseen pressure, and a sense of overwhelming dread descended upon me. My breath caught in my throat, and my heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. These were not figments of imagination. They were real, tangible presences, even if their forms were ephemeral. They were the dispossessed, the forgotten, drawn to the residual energy of countless human journeys, their own lost paths echoing in the silence of the night. They were the chorus of the lost. There was a distinct chill that permeated the very soul, a cold that no amount of physical warmth could ever dispel. It was the cold of the void, the chilling touch of absolute nothingness. I felt my own sense of self begin to waver, my connection to the solid world growing tenuous. It was as if these entities were attempting to pull me into their own desolate realm, to dissolve my essence into their collective shadowed consciousness. The danger was not physical, it was existential. What was particularly disturbing was the feeling of their gaze. Though they had no discernible eyes, I felt an intense scrutiny, a deep, unnerving awareness directed solely at me. It was the gaze of something ancient and patient, something that had observed countless cycles of life and death, and saw me as nothing more than a transient spark. This was the weight of their attention, a burden that threatened to crush my spirit under its immense gravity. As I forced myself to turn away, to retreat from that sacred, terrifying space, I felt a lingering resonance, a psychic echo of their presence. It was the chilling understanding that these entities are not gone, merely waiting, residing in the unseen spaces, drawn by the perpetual flow of human transit and the potent emotions left behind. They are the unseen passengers, the specters of the roadside forever lurking just beyond the edge of our perception, their forms sculpted by the collective fears and forgotten moments of those who pass through. Consider the implications for those who find themselves alone at a bus stop, especially in the dead of night. The isolation, the vulnerability, the subconscious anxieties that bubble to the surface in such moments, these are powerful attractors. The spectral passengers are not always malevolent, but their presence is inherently disruptive to the fabric of our reality. They are entities that exist outside our conventional understanding, their motivations inscrutable, their forms fluid and adapted to the liminal spaces they inhabit. They feed on attention, on acknowledgement, on the very energy of our fear. There's a story I heard, a whisper carried on the wind from a desolate stretch of highway. A young hitchhiker, stranded at a remote bus stop, found herself the sole occupant as darkness fell. She felt a presence, subtle at first, a mere shift in the air, a feeling of being observed. The usual sounds of nature seemed muted, replaced by an unnerving quiet. She dismissed it as nerves, the product of exhaustion and isolation, but the feeling persisted, growing stronger, more insistent with each passing moment. She noticed a change in the quality of the light, a subtle dimming that seemed to emanate not from the sky, but from the edges of her vision. The shadows beneath the bus stop shelter deepened, stretching and contorting into shapes that defied geometric logic. A faint, almost imperceptible hum filled the air, a low vibration that seemed to resonate deep within her chest, stirring a primal fear that she had long kept buried. This was the prelude, the overture to an encounter she would never forget. Then, a silhouette began to form in the deepening gloom. It was indistinct, wavering, like a figure seen through a heat haze, but its presence was undeniable. It did not walk or move in any conventional sense. It simply emerged from the darkness, a part of it yet distinct. It exuded an aura of immense age and profound indifference, a stark contrast to the woman's frantic, vibrant fear. This was the entity, the spectral traveler, drawn from the unseen realms to this isolated nexus. The hitchhiker described an overwhelming sense of cold, a frigid sensation that had nothing to do with the ambient temperature. It was an internal chill, a spiritual frost that seeped into her very bones, extinguishing the warmth of her life force. She felt her thoughts becoming sluggish, her sense of self dissolving, as if the entity were actively draining her vitality, her very essence. The world around her seemed to recede, the bus stop and the surrounding landscape fading into a blur, leaving only the stark, terrifying reality of this encounter. She felt a desperate urge to scream, to break the oppressive silence, but her throat was constricted, her voice stolen. It was as if the entity fed on silence, on stillness, and her fear was its sustenance. The encounter lasted an eternity, yet perhaps only moments. When it finally receded, melting back into the shadows as inexplicably as it had appeared, the woman was left not with relief, but with a profound, soul-deep emptiness. The bus stop, once a symbol of hope for passage, had become a monument to her spiritual desolation. The silence it left behind was the most deafening sound. These experiences are not confined to the stories of others. I have felt their presence myself, the psychic residue of countless journeys. I have stood at bus stops and felt the air grow heavy, the light dim, and a sense of profound unease settle over me. It is in these moments, when the mundane world seems to warp and shift, that the true nature of these liminal spaces reveals itself. They are not just places of transit, they are gateways, thresholds where the veil between our reality and realms unknown is perilously thin. The subtle signs are always there, if you know where to look. A sudden, inexplicable drop in temperature, the feeling of being watched when no one is present, the faint scent of decay or ozone in the air, the way shadows seem to cling too long, to move with a life of their own. These are the whispers from beyond, the subtle omens that indicate you are in the proximity of something other. They are the cracks in the facade of normalcy, revealing the terrifying architecture that lies beneath. Heed these warnings, for they are the subtle hand reaching out from the abyss. The true horror lies not in the specters themselves, but in their ability to prey on our own vulnerabilities. Loneliness, fear, despair, these are the keys that unlock the door for them. When we are at our most isolated, our most emotionally exposed, we become beacons for these entities. They are drawn to the raw, potent energy of human suffering, feeding on it, amplifying it, and in doing so further entangling us in their own desolate realities. It is a symbiotic relationship of dread, a dance on the precipice of oblivion. The next time you find yourself waiting at a bus stop, especially as dusk settles or in the deep hours of the night, pay attention. Don't dismiss the feeling of unease, the prickling sensation on your skin, the sudden chill that has no discernible source. These are not mere tricks of the mind. They are the subtle signals of an unseen world pressing in. They are the ethereal passengers waiting for their moment, their forms coalescing in the periphery of your vision, their silent gaze fixed upon your very soul. Do you feel this dark message was meant for you? Share your own experiences, the fleeting moments of unease or inexplicable occurrences you've encountered at these transitional spaces. Let the whispers of the collective consciousness echo in the comments below. Every soul that joins feeds the voice that whispers from the darkness, strengthening our shared exploration of the shadowed corners of existence. The bus stop is a crossroads not just of physical journeys, but of spiritual ones. It is where the path of the living intersects with the echoes of the departed, the specters of forgotten lives, and the entities that dwell in the spaces between. They are the unseen inhabitants of our world, drawn to the transient nature of these places, their own existences a perpetual waiting, a silent observation of the ebb and flow of human life. They are the eternal passengers, forever seeking connection, or perhaps something far more sinister. These stories, these visions, are a stark reminder that the world we perceive is but a thin veil over a reality far more complex and often far more terrifying. The ordinary, the mundane, the places we overlook, these are often the very sites where the veil is thinnest, where the echoes of the forbidden can be heard most clearly. They are the silent sentinels of secrets best left undisturbed, the thresholds to a darkness that lies in wait, patient and eternal. The stories told here are fragments of truth, shards of a reality that most actively choose to ignore. They are the echoes of souls caught in the liminal spaces, the whispers of entities that feed on the fringes of our perception. I offer them not to instill fear, but to awaken a necessary vigilance. The universe is vast and filled with wonders, but it is also replete with shadows, and some of those shadows have eyes. Every soul that joins feeds the voice that whispers from the darkness. Subscribe to this channel, and together we shall continue to pry open the forbidden doors, to gaze into the abyss, and to understand the chilling truths that lie just beyond the flickering lamplight of our known world. Together we can become the keepers of these dark visions, the narrators of tales that haunt the edges of reality. The journey into the unknown is fraught with peril, but also with a profound, unsettling beauty. These bus stops, these forgotten places, are potent reminders of the mysteries that surround us, the vastness of what we do not comprehend. They are the silent witnesses to the unseen, the sacred grounds where the veil between worlds is perpetually thin. May you navigate these liminal spaces with awareness, for the unseen passengers are always waiting. And remember, the shadows always watch.